I just wrapped up a meeting with the individuals you see here, people that are not unfamiliar to you. I want to thank, first of all, our sheriff, Figueroa, who I've known for many, many years, for welcoming us here today and sharing his thoughts with me. And Manny Neji, our district attorney, did a great job and gave me some of the insights into the challenges that he and his team are facing, the volume of work, the number of hours that his staff are putting in, and just the frustration with the current laws as they stand. I also want to thank Pete Hansen, our director of Office of Victim Services, who we'll be hearing from shortly as well, to tell you from the victim's point of view why the fight we're in is so incredibly important. These individuals dedicate their lives to keeping New Yorkers safe. And unfortunately, too often their efforts are being undermined by loopholes in our laws as written. Over and over again, they meticulously investigate crimes, they make arrests, they turn over vast amounts of evidence, often to only have the charges thrown out and the defendants walk free over minor technicalities. This isn't just demoralizing for law enforcement, it's traumatizing for the victims. Those whose suffering is just compounded by inexplicably denied justice. This has to end. That's why I will continue to refuse to sign on to any budget deal that does not include a way to fix these fatal flaws in our laws and to just put us on the right track again. And let me explain how we arrived at this crisis point. In 2019, there was a major effort to reform our discovery laws. The intentions were good. It was important to step up at the time and recognize that the system was totally skewed toward the sides of the prosecution, that there were defendants left languishing in jails waiting for so long to finally have their cases brought. That in itself was an injustice. And I want to make sure that the changes we're talking about here, we're not trying to undo those. We're trying to acknowledge that there have been problems created that end up in too many dismissals, narrowing down our focus. And the changes we're talking about, the changes that happen then, ensure that piles of evidence are just not dropped on district attorneys on the eve of the trial, and that no one languishes waiting for the day in court. So that was what was behind those. Because anyone charged with a crime does deserve to know the evidence against them, and certainly deserves a speedy trial. That's important to all of us. It's a New York value. We can all agree on that. Like I said, the pendulum has swung too far. And the unintended consequences for victims particularly have been devastating. And right now, it doesn't just require the prosecutors to turn over relevant evidence. Anything remotely related to the case must also be turned over. Now, think about that. That doesn't happen, you turn over something even remotely related to the case, the entire case, no matter how strong it is, no matter how much work went into it, how convincing it is, the entire case can be thrown out. And that's regardless of the weight of the evidence, it's regardless of the severity of the crime, and this broad standard has become a procedural minefield. So prosecutors can easily miss some random detail that has no impact on the defense, or submitted something a day late because they're waiting for some document to be created. And guess what happens? A violent criminal can walk free. And for these reasons, dismissals in our statewide, have jumped from about 10,000 dismissals in 2019 to almost 50,000 in 2024. The only difference? The change in the laws. Think about all those people, every one of them has a victim. Someone who walks out of court and says, what happened? I thought we were going to go to court. I thought I was probably going to get justice. And they walk out the door, but so does the accused. They walk out without consequences. So this extraordinary uptick cuts across every criminal category, from drunk driving to domestic abuse cases. 94% of domestic abuse cases are dismissed, all the way up to attempted murder. In one case, this is really heartbreaking, a man was charged with attempted murder of a teenage boy. And prosecutors had thought they submitted all of the police body cam videos. It turned out there was one clip inadvertently left out. What was on this piece of evidence? It was the EMTs wheeling the boy out on a stretcher. That's all that was missing. Everything else was built. It was a strong case. Certainly that would not be considered case-altering footage. It was not harmful to the defense. Everyone knew this person was injured and went to the hospital. But because of this minor oversight, guess what happened? The entire case was dismissed. Today, that boy is still sitting in the hospital, badly disabled. Meanwhile, the man who put him there walked out free. In another case, a serial drunk driver was charged with crashing his motorcycle into someone else while he was under the influence. But the case, in that one, the case was dismissed because one of the arresting officers had once accidentally hit a garbage can with his patrol car, and that wasn't turned over in time. And that happened 6 years before the arrest. I'm not making this up. Because the prosecutors didn't think to disclose this irrelevant detail, that drunk driver is back driving on our roads. We don't want this anymore. We don't want this. Unrepentant criminals making a mockery of our justice system. So listen, I don't just make record investments in law enforcement, I really have. I put a lot of money into our DA's offices, understanding the challenges, the weight of the burdens they're weighing under, I think over $200 million. We have been doing an extraordinary job trying to help on the financial side. But it's just a shame to see all this solid police work go to waste and watch people walk free. And all I'm asking for is support from the legislature for common sense reforms that'll hold criminals accountable and keep our communities safe, but also give defendants their due. We're not taking that away. My intent is to uphold the original premise behind the reforms back in 2019. We also want to prevent entire cases from being dismissed if the discovery error is not harmful to the defense. So our budget negotiations have stretched out. Heard all about it. I refuse to back down. I know there's thousands of people across the state who are counting me to hold strong on this. And fortunately, we passed the budget extenders. There's no money. It's not in Washington where everything shuts down. Everything's still fine. You didn't notice it, right? And I've yet to hear anyone come up to me. And I go to grocery stores. I go to diners. Not one person has ever come up to me and says, "Oh my God, Governor, the budget's late." Right? They say, "Thanks for fighting for us. Thanks for standing up. Thanks for doing what you're doing." And I know there's a lot of people who appreciate it. I may never see them personally, but they want someone who's willing to stand up and say, that is wrong, we must fix it, and I'm not changing, I'm not signing the budget until we get it done. And so we'll get that done. I'll put, in addition to that, public safety initiative on top of the bail reforms we've had over the last few years, and our laws against retail theft, and closing down illegal cannabis shops. We've done a lot, but every one of them had to be done in the budget because the legislature was not doing it on their own. We're also trying to focus on affordability while I'm at it. We all know, I don't need to tell you. Word of caution, do not go out looking for eggs before Easter. Your jaw will drop at how expensive everything has become. You know, inflation's been so hard on New Yorkers, and now we have the tariffs and the impact of that and the uncertainty with 401ks. Everybody's head's just spinning. But I want to work hard for you by putting more money back in your pockets, and I have a plan. It's in the budget. And I have a middle-class tax cut I want to get enacted. I want to have a inflation refund to put more money back in people's pockets. If you have little children, helping you with the cost of a grandma and a mom. I know how expensive it is when the kids are little. Put $1,000 back in the pockets of people with little kids. Free school lunches and breakfast. I mean, this is going to save money for parents. So we're going to do this. And I've calculated we'll put about $5,000 back in New Yorkers' pockets. You know why we need to do that soon? Because they're saying that the cost of the tariffs are going to result in about $3,000 to $6,000 coming out of your pockets, everything costing more. So I want to get back. When I go up to Albany, I'm heading up there. I want to get this done over the finish line, but we're going to get the discovery reforms done as well. So we can all agree on this? Are you with me on this? Does this make a lot of sense? So I need to get up there. You need to support this so we can finish the job and spread the word about what we're fighting for. Call your representatives, let them know that this is common sense. The governor's got a plan. It's not to roll back the reforms that were so important for our justice system, because I believe in this, but also to say it's gone too far. Let's find that place where we can finally all agree this is finally justice in New York. So no more throwing out these cases, no more making victims walk out, sometimes in tears. I heard stories of victims of domestic violence in New York City yesterday. And they just walked out and says, I came up here, I bared my soul, I told everything about something that horrible that happened to me. And and I go to the police office, and I have to repeat the story again for district attorneys, and I have to wait for months, I have to find all this information, receipts and phone logs, and I finally do all this, and my abuser walks out. I don't have an order of protection anymore. I'm vulnerable. My kids and I are scared. My friends, this is New York. We can't let this happen anymore. These people need our help. Let's get this done. Thank you very much. With that, I'd like to call up and get some reflections from our great Sheriff Juan Figueroa, who's going to tell us the impact of these laws are having on the Sheriff's Office. Thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you, Governor. Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank the Governor for a busy schedule to come down here to Ulster County and discuss such an important issue in the criminal justice system. I want to acknowledge a lot of our community leaders, our chief of the city of Kingston, and our legislative leaders that are here today as well, because this is a team effort. And so I want to thank you all for being here. I know what it's like to be a person of color, to be a poor person. I know what it's like when people go to court and it was unfair. In 37 years, I've seen it. The legislature, our Assembly and Senate, their intent was good. They changed the discovery. But that's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about adjusting things that went a little too far, the unintended consequences. In a rural county like Ulster County, like most of New York is, we have a lot of issues with part-time police departments that can't get the information in time for the DA's office to certify their discovery, which may cause a case to be dismissed. It's happened. Discovery, I'm fortunate and lucky to have a great legislature. We were able to get a discovery coordinator to do all the discovery for the sheriff's office, but that's not the case in a lot of the local police departments. And that certification has to be done by the district attorney's office in order to prosecute cases. Speaking of cases, pertinent cases, important cases, egregious cases that occur in this county, there have been many times where we submit subpoenas to get information, whether it's on technology, submit warrants to get information. That takes months. So the DA's office is unable to certify their discovery to the defense. The governor's not saying do away with discovery. That's not what she's saying. She's saying let's look at it and think of just some of the cases she spoke about and all the cases that we have ran into locally here in Ulster County, as well as the rural counties in the state of New York, and the issues without resources that we can't really work toward. It's unfair to the victims. Well, what about the victims? The victims of these crimes. So that's why I'm in support of amending this, and I'm in support of the governor. And thank you, Governor. I'd like to introduce the next speaker, our district attorney, Emmanuel Nagy.
Governor, thank you for your proposal, and thank you for coming to our community. All our legislators who are here, police and law enforcement people, and members of the community who have taken the time to be here. This is a very important issue. I'm sure some of you may already know about one of the most celebrated and difficult cases in Ulster County by the name of Raymond Snyder. Raymond Snyder was a murder case in this county that because of discovery shenanigans, there had to be additional lawsuits to resolve the case. Eventually it went to Albany on a Article 78 proceeding. We won that case in Albany, came back, tried it, and Raymond Snyder was convicted for murder. Imagine how long it took for the victim's family dealing with that stress over and over. And by the way, it's not just one case. Each assistant DA in my office has about 60 cases or more. You are required, before you can certify that you have complied with discovery, you are required to review all the evidence in the case. Sometimes you have 20 to 60 over 100 videos that you have to review. Each video perhaps has 5, 10, 12, 20 hours that you have to review. How do you get through that? Within the short time, 24 hours in a day. The complications and difficulties that these present to us are being exploited. Being exploited by the gamesmanship that happens in the courtroom. I wholeheartedly support the governor's proposal because it makes things easier. It makes things easier to get done and to get justice for every victim, every defendant, and for our community. Imagine during the whole time that we are fighting the discovery issues in court, a defendant's case is languishing. It continues to wait. Instead of taking about 10 months to 12 months to resolve, it ends up taking a year and a half, 2 years before you get to trial. That's unnecessary, and the governor's proposals, the reforms that she has, the amendments she has proposed to be reformed are necessary to make this fairer and make it work for all, for justice for all. Thank you for coming. My friend Chris Liberati Conant, the DA from Columbia County, please.
Again, thank you, District Attorney Neji, and thank you, Governor. It's an honor to stand here with you today, fighting for this extremely important reform for our discovery laws. Now, as you heard, my name is Chris Liberati Conant. I'm District Attorney across the river in Columbia County. But I didn't start my career as a district attorney or a prosecutor. I started my career with Mental Hygiene Legal Service, fighting for indigent rights, defending indigent defendants. I care very deeply about the rights of defendants and protecting their rights. And that's why I do support the heart of the 2019 discovery reforms. The idea, as the governor said, that the defendant should have access to all the information in the file, that they should see the evidence before them and against them. Of course, our files are open to the defense, and that is not something that is changing under the governor's proposed reforms. They will still have access to that same information they have now. And what is not happening anymore, that the governor averted to, is defendants aren't being presented with a giant stack of papers right before trial or during trial. They're not getting sandbagged. What's happening now is my office, prosecutors' offices across the state are getting sandbagged at every single trial by delayed and frivolous discovery motions. And I have an office of 8 attorneys, 8 assistant district attorneys. We have hundreds of felonies and thousands of misdemeanors to prosecute every year, and we are being burdened by this, the way the discovery law exists right now. So, we're just asking for two really big things here. As the governor said, cases should not be dismissed if there's no prejudice to the defendant. That's simple, that's straightforward. The other thing is the defense should not be permitted to wait and wait and wait for 6 months, for 18 months, and wait to make a motion on the eve of trial to try to get their cases dismissed on a technicality. And I say again, this is happening over and over in every single trial we have. It's not efficient, it's a waste of our resources, and it puts crime victims at risk. It puts public safety at risk. So, you know, I've been, in my career, in addition to working in public defense, I've been an assistant attorney general, an assistant solicitor general for the state of New York. I've been a judicial law clerk for a trial court judge and for the highest court in the state. I am so proud to stand behind the governor's proposal because it's thoughtful, it's well-reasoned, and it is fair to everybody in this state, and everybody in this system. And so I just implore our legislatures to please stand with the governor on this issue and make this system fair for everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. District Attorney, especially with your vast experience seeing both sides of the criminal justice system and still standing for these reforms to show that they're so necessary. I also want to recognize now Our Director of Office and Victim Services, Bea Hanson, is doing an extraordinary job, putting her heart and soul into her work every single day on behalf of the victims of New York. Thank you. So I've spent about the last 30 years working in victim services, either at a nonprofit organization or in government agencies, and I have never seen leadership like Governor Hochul's leadership in terms of supporting victims of crime and violence. And one of the things that we've seen that is in her executive budget, that she's really dedicated funding to serving victims. And I think without any changes in discovery, it's really tough to be able to do that kind of work. We have, thanks to the governor, we've awarded an unprecedented amount of money, almost $380 million over the next 3 years to support victim service organizations. And some of those victims want to go through the criminal justice system, some don't. But for those who want to go through the criminal justice system, we need to make that work. And so the discovery reform is really, really critical to be able to make those things work for those survivors who want to go through the system. We've been traveling around the state, talking to many different folks in different communities, from rural to suburban to urban areas. And the one message I hear is just the impact of the discovery right now and the need for the changes, because without anything having to do with the cases are dropped. And think about what impact that has on survivors. I've heard from survivors of domestic violence, survivors of sexual assault. It's not about, usually what happens is a case would be, we can't prosecute it, we don't have enough evidence. That's hard enough for a victim to be able to address and to be able to deal with. But to know that the only reason that the case was dropped is because somebody didn't have a piece of paper and it was a duplicate copy of some kind of piece of paper, or we didn't get the paper that we needed from the hospital, we didn't have any knowledge of it, but we find out about it too late. That just has to stop. It isn't fair. And so I just want to thank the governor and thank all of you for all of your support. We need to get this done, so let's get this done. Thank you. Well, thank you all for joining us. I really appreciate the unified voice that's coming out of our rural communities. We've been spending a lot of time in the city, but also the DAs up here work so hard in the sheriff's office, and I just want to let them and their teams know how grateful we are. I also think, are we joined by Morgan Fitton, Executive Director of our District Attorney Association? And Morgan, thank you very much for your advocacy and representation of all the district attorneys. They're very diverse, very core in the state. I know most of them, but thank you all for your work here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. That concludes our program. Thank you, everyone.